Okay, this is part two of the interview with the great Robin Oliver Walker. And so when we had left off, we was talking about hidden hidden colors and what that did for you and um you rewriting When We Ruled and other works and that the white company that wanted you to write school books for children and things of that nature and how I said
That's right. That's right.
yep.
That's right.
So I want to get. Do you want to continue on that on like your future endeavors or?
Only to make the point that you suggested that When We Ruled is my magnum opus. It probably is, but the book that I'm the proudest of is actually this one here, and this book is called Everyday Life in an Early West African Empire, and this book is about the Songhai Empire. And what we really have done is everyday life. So let me just give you some of the title headings. So the title headings, we've got things like climate, we've got things like control of the economy, the family, caste and slaves, towns and cities, urbanism, countryside, food and drink, music and dance, religious beliefs, transportation, industries, schools, boys' initiation. So when it comes to reconstructing life in medieval West Africa and reconstructing it with the detail, with the grandeur, with the pomp it deserves, I think we've done it. And so very, very proud of this book. But as I said, we haven't been able to successfully market it because no one's buying it. But this is the book that I'm proudest of.
Hmm. So you were talking about Timbuktu and Mali, right? Which that is a staple in West
That's right. That's
African
right.
civilizations. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm asking you a question on this, but
Yeah.
when I was reading, I think it was maybe the lost um the Lost Cities of Africa by Basil Davidson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
he talks about how when Songhai, Timbuktu and Songhai was destroyed, by Queen Elizabeth. One of the Queen Elizabeths, wrote a letter to the King of Morocco saying that I'll give you ammunition to destroy the Western Sudan, right? And so,
That's right. That's right.
West Africa, well, Timbuktu was destroyed in 1591. They kidnapped Ahmed Baba, all of that.
Yeah.
So, what I want to ask is if would I be wrong to come up with the thesis of if Timbuktu was not destroyed by Morocco and Britain, that Africa wouldn't have been completely destroyed by the transatlantic slave trade.
Yes. 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 Um, yeah, I think that's a fair theory, and certainly that's what I think happened. And I think the point of destroying Songhai was to facilitate transatlantic enslavement. Now, it's possible that small numbers of people would have been pulled out of Africa anyway, but nowhere near the millions that ended up being pulled out. So, yeah, I share that theory. I agree with you.
Because I tend to notice when people want to talk about the splendor of West Africa and they think of Timbuktu as a very wonderful place that was allegedly by the legends, which was a city of gold. People do not want to talk about how the tragic ending. It was Muslim against Muslim. To where I was reading Felix Dubois, Timbuktu the Mysterious, and I can remember there was a
Yeah, yeah,
account in there where one of the emissaries one of the emissaries from Timbuktu was brought to Morocco, and they had
Yeah,
said, "Why are you attacking us? We're Islamic,
yeah.
we're Muslims like you all are." And then the emissaries got beheaded by the Moroccan government, and that really it breaks my heart, to this day. You know, even with the even a little bit modern, the Tuareg people up in like the early 2000s was trying to blow up the 333 saints that still kind of remained in Timbuktu, and they tried to burn up the
Let me answer that.
libraries.
That wasn't them.
Hmm.
Well, that wasn't them. Trust me, that wasn't them.
Okay.
That wasn't them. What it was is the Tuaregs do indeed have a problem with the Malian government, and they do indeed want to break away from Mali, facts. But what happened was international fighters, including Pakistanis and so on, have joined the Tuareg agenda and they turned it into their own agenda. And so when it came to who blew up or attempted to blow up the 333 Saints, yeah, that wasn't the Tuaregs that did that. This was the international fighters that did that. And what it is a lot of the international fighters are trying to promote Wahhabi Islam, and that's the Islam that is trying to blow up that heritage in places like Timbuktu. So it wasn't the Tuaregs. So while the Tuaregs do have a problem with Mali, that wasn't their handiwork. That was international fighters that did that.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so another question I want to ask you. I wonder. See, I want to pick your brain about modern politics for a second. We're not gonna get too deep, but this is just
No
a
problem.
problem that I'm kind of seeing within my own ethnic group and around the world. I want to ask you,
Yeah.
do you see Pan-Africanism as a way of freeing African people everywhere around the planet? Because with a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
prominent intellectuals in my so-called ethnic group, we're saying that America is our home. Uh, we don't. I don't care about these Jamaican people. I don't care about these Barbadian people. We're our own tribe. So, like, do you see Pan Africanism as an answer?
Yes. Here's the point. I understand why African Americans are frustrated at what African Americans call immigrants. I get it. There are immigrants from Caribbean countries and from African countries who are disrespectful to African Americans, and they are disrespectful to the African American cause. And as we say in Jamaica, fire bomb them. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that every Black immigrant is a sellout, and it doesn't mean every Black immigrant is anti what African Americans are trying to do. And so, what I believe is if you look at the history of it, yes, there were sellouts, but there was also Marcus Garvey. Yes, there were sellouts, but there was also Stokely Carmichael. Some people call him Kwame Ture. Yes, there were sellouts, but there was also Opal Tometi. Yes, there were sellouts, but there were also Shirley Anita Chisholm. Yes, there were sellouts, but there was also Malcolm X. And these people were Opal Tometi was Nigerian, Kwame Ture was Trinidadian, Shirley Anita Chisholm, one of her parents was from Barbados, another one of her parents is from Guyana. Hell, even the Minister Farrakhan, his family is from somewhere in the Caribbean. So the sellouts exist and firebomb them, but they're not the only people. Do you see? All right, so Pan-Africanism. Let me tell you why African Americans need Pan-Africanism. You all are still a minority in America. You're still outnumbered 7-1. If the other people calling themselves Americans move against you, you've got nobody to stand up for you. Right? Now, I'm not saying Africa is ready to stand up for you, but you're going to have to build those alliances with Africa so that someone will stand up for you. They may not do it now, but you're going to need that in the future. And what Pan-Africanism is supposed to do is every country where African people are a minority, we need a big brother protector. This is what Marcus Garvey taught us. And that big brother protector's job is to be a protector. So if the American government moves against you, there are people outside America who are looking out for you and will take some action. Do you see? And now, I'm not saying Pan-Africanism is round the corner. It's not. It may take us years. But the truth is, it still needs to happen and still needs to be supported. Do you see? Same thing for people in my, I'm in Britain. There are 2.5 million of us. We're outnumbered something like 30-1. Yeah, you lot 7-1 with us, it's 30-1. We know that the British government can move against us at any time. We need to have a big brother. Do you see? I don't know if you've been following modern Britain, but the last two Home Secretaries, what in other countries is called the Minister of the Interior, have both been women of color. They're not African women, but they've been women of color, and they have both been crazy. Immigrants out on all kinds of stuff, crazy, and consequently, Pan-Africanism is absolutely essential. Yeah, Pan-Africanism might not produce fruits now, but it will produce fruits at some time.
So I would ask you this question as well. Was there any Pan-African activities that you've done? Like, we already went over Jamaica, but have you went to any country in Africa, or you know, joined the,
Yeah.
have you linked up with a lot of prominent people in African countries?
Yeah, let me answer that. What happened was the African Union, they put together a project with a view to rewriting. There's a project that was done back in the day by Professor W.E.B. Du Bois called Africa Encyclopedia, or Encyclopedia Africana. That project, we're trying to update the project. And I was invited to join a committee, part of the African Union, to help rewrite. It's going to be the 4th edition of Encyclopedia Africana. And the result is I have attended meetings in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Senegal, and then off the backs of those meetings, I was invited by a former Minister of Education in Mali to visit Mali. So, in Mali, I met the librarian, Abdul Kader Haidara, the person that collects the Timbuktu manuscript. I met him. And that was part of this trip that was arranged for me by a former Minister of Education in Mali. I also met the legendary Ali Ould Sidi, who is a former mayor of Mali. Former mayor of Timbuktu. And he was the one that told me about them finding a 16th century maths manuscript, having it translated, having it sent to France to check the level. And it was an algebra paper, and the level of the algebra was the same as the second year of a maths degree in modern Paris. Yeah. I met that gentleman, and that's what he told me. And so, the Malians looked after me. So basically, 3 countries under the auspices of African Union, a 4 Kenya, independently. And I've been to Ethiopia. I was in Ethiopia 3 months ago. And in Ethiopia, we were doing some business, but I can't really talk about that project because it's not completed yet. When it's completed, we'll tell people what we were doing. But Ethiopia, that was very, very good. We got to meet a lot of officials. So we got to meet the Deputy Prime Minister, Demeke Mekonnen. So that was good. That was good.
Hmm. Speaking of
So,
what's up?
yeah, I mean, one of the places we went to in Ethiopia was Lalibela.
Did
You know,
you
the city
go
of underground churches. Yeah,
did you
we
go
went.
there?
Yeah, oh yeah, we spent 2 days in Lalibela.
You went into church too?
Yes, oh yeah, yeah.
Mm. Because I have a neighbor of mine who's belongs to that church, right? And he says they got the Ark of the Covenant down there, so it must have been really interesting.
Not that one. Yeah, not that one. Not that one. The church, the one that supposedly has the Ark of the Covenant, is the church in Aksum. This isn't Aksum. This is Lalibela.
Okay.
Yeah. But Lalibela was extraordinary. It's still a pilgrimage site, so there are people praying in those churches. Yeah. There are people praying there, but fantastic site. Life changing. We're really, really pleased. We
Mm.
got to go and see it.
Even I remember I attended one of your Zoom meetings, and when you were in Mali, they was feeding you fresh crab legs and butter, right?
That wasn't Mali. Crab legs. It wasn't crab. Lobster. Lobster. That was Sierra Leone. That was Sierra Leone. In Mali, there was a dish that was served up, and they called it tagine, and it's almost identical to what in Jamaica would be called curry goat. Yeah, but the lobster that was Sierra Leone. I even talk about it in my lecture because there was this weird beastie. They said it was lobster. I've no idea what it was.
Yeah, when you was matter of fact, we gonna get to that towards the end, but man, I mean, that's interesting that like, cause that kind of goes against the narrative of these Africans. They don't they don't like us. They don't. You know what I'm saying? They showed you love. They took care of you. They regard you, as a man of like high intelligence, and you have connections. You know.
And not only that, I mean, when I visited America, I spent 9 days in America. I spent that with William Paul Coates, the publisher of Black Classic Press. You've heard of Ta-Nehisi Coates, right?
Yep.
William Paul Coates is his father. I say that, you know what I'm saying, proper looked after. And so in Africa, yeah, I'm proper looked after. I mean, can't complain. Can't complain.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I
Yeah.
want to ask you, did you ever have any like a great relationship with any of our great uh African American historians like Runoko Rashidi, may he rest in peace. I could remember when I was watching there, there's this YouTube show where I forget, you've been on there at least 3 times. This was this beautiful black woman. It was the Happy People. Yep, yep. And I can remember when they interviewed Runoko Rashidi, right? And Runoko Rashidi, and this kind of makes me have a tear in my eye when I think about this. He said they brought up how they interviewed you and how much they bigged you up. And Runoko Rashidi
Mhm.
said, Robin is one of my favorite people. And, what was your relationship with that great elder? Because, it's
Here's the thing: the great African American scholars, most of them, and the result was I didn't get to know any of them as personal friends. So in Britain, we certainly brought over Dr. Charles Finch. And I spoke to Finch, but I can't really say we were like friends because the generation difference was big, right? Rashidi was the only one who made a point of and work with us. Do you see? So with Rashidi, when he came to London, he would usually drop in, um, and or make himself available so that people could meet with him. And I work for an education charity, and my boss, her name is Jacinth Martin. Rashidi shouted her out in one of his books, and so we got to do projects with Rashidi. And if Rashidi spoke in London, so I would open up for him. Do you see? So we got to spend a lot of time with Rashidi. We got to talk to Rashidi, and he was a very, very kind, charitable man. But with the other African Americans, I never managed to build that kind of connection. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Some cases, because the age gap was too big. In other cases, people flew in, flew out. They didn't make the kind of connections. Do you see?
Mm.
Whereas Rashidi did.
Wow. Because he seemed like, from interviews, he seemed like he was a very cool, grandfatherly type guy, you know? He was very calm in
Yeah,
his
yeah,
final years. When I would listen to his lectures, he'd just be, he'd be sitting back like, he's telling one of those stories where, the black man, he's sitting by Sunday morning, talking to the
yeah,
grandkids about life back in the day. It was very like,
yeah. That
go ahead.
you're right. I mean, yeah, he's very engaging, very personable, and he knows how to break information down so it's really, really simple and really, really accessible. And he was very popular, you know. Um, you see, the other great scholars, like people like, sake of argument, um, James Small. James Small didn't come over to Britain that much, or if he did, I missed him. Do you see? Whereas Rashidi did. And so the result was the kind of connection that we were able to build with Rashidi. It was easier because we saw more of him, you know. Now it could well be with someone like James Small, people didn't invite him over. That's possible, but it was much easier to make friendships with Rashidi. So much so that Rashidi wrote the afterword to this book. Yeah, can you see that it says there? Afterword by Runoko Rashidi. See that?
I see it.
Yeah, he wrote that. And so, as I said, we proud of this book. We proud of this book.
Because in my version of When We Ruled, he wrote an excellent introduction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like,
And I'm grateful that he did that, you know.
and I'm pretty sure that raised the
And similarly, he invited me to write a foreword to one of his books.
really.
True, true. Yeah, so one of his books, he did a book called African Presence in Early Europe. Not Van Sertima's book, but his book. And the very first comments is from me. So he asked me to write 500 words or something. So yeah, I wrote the foreword to one of his books.
Mm, that's man, that's cool that you were able to just really have that good relationship with Rudoko Rashidi like that because um you know, but I mean, he's kind of very obscure in terms of like about his life and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? We know very sparingly about him.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's good that you have a personal and work relationship with him to where his memory could live on through you, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and I intend to do what I can to keep the memory. Yeah, and I intend to do what I can to keep the memory of his work alive because um, for the history of Black people outside Africa, he's the man. It is what it is. He's the man.
Mm. He really was. I have one of his books that he wrote something in called The Golden Age of the Moors.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to ask you a question about the Moors as
Hmm.
well. Like my first,
Absolutely.
okay, my first knowing about who the Moors were was when
Yeah.
I was a Shakespearean actor in middle school and high school. When I was in eighth grade, I had to play the role of Othello, and I did the whole play. And
Hmm.
I was very kind of confused why Iago would always say, "I hate the Moor." And I asked my theater teacher at the time, who was a white man, I was like, why does Iago, keep saying, "I hate the Moor"? Like, but why does he keep saying that? And my theater teacher told me that Moor means black. So my question is, who were the Moors of Africa?
All right. The people that ruled in Spain between approximately 710 AD and 1492 AD. Some people call them Moors, some people call them Arabs. And if we split the Moors into one group and the Arabs into other, there were four dynasties. And of the four dynasties, two of them were definitely African. And so what you had was a dynasty called the Almoravids, and the Almoravids ruled in Spain round about 1085, 1086 AD, something like that. And then you had a second group called the Almohades, and the Almohades ruled in Spain from about 1150 AD. And both of them ruled from the same city. They ruled from the Spanish city of Seville. So Seville is an African built city. So how do we know the Moors were black? Well, this is how we know. In the case of the Almoravids, we know where they came from. They came from Senegal, or to be exact, the Senegal River region. And coming from the Senegal River region, I mean, I've been to Senegal. Everybody's not just black, they're jet black, right? Now, there's a Spanish map, and the map was drawn in 1433, and they incongruously have the Moorish king, Yusuf ibn Tashifin, and Mansa Musa on the same map. Now, they're not the same time zone, but the map puts them on the same map. And Mansa Musa is shown as dark skinned, but Yusuf ibn Tashifin is shown as much, much blacker. So if Mansa Musa is our standard bearer for negroidicity, Yusuf ibn Tashifin is much, much darker. And if you ever get a chance to pull up the map, it's 1433. You can see it for yourself. Yusuf ibn Tashifin is much, much blacker. And since that map was drawn in Spain, that means that the Spanish would have had reason for presenting Yusuf darker than Mansa Musa. And so that's one piece of evidence that shows this. Then you have the Almohades dynasty. The Almohades dynasty are known as Mezmuda Berbers. And the Mezmuda Berbers are described as, there's a contemporaneous document that tells us that they were Sudan, black. And so we've got two black dynasties. Now, the other dynasties, the Umayyads and the Beni Nazir, these were not black dynasties, but we know that intermarriage between Africans and Arabs took place. And so some of the history that took place with the Umayyads belongs to us, Africans, and some of the history of the Beni Nazir also belongs to us. So I don't say every single Moor was black. They weren't. There were light-skinned ones. There were near-white ones as well. But the evidence suggests that the black ones were the majority. Another thing, and I quote this in When We Ruled, did you know that there's a genetic study that was done on Portuguese people about the importation of sickle cell into the Portuguese population? And they believe from the study that sickle cell had been imported twice. And the first time it was imported was between the 8th and the 13th century. And the 8th and the 13th centuries correspond exactly with the Moorish period. And this would show that the majority of the Moors that entered Spain would have been Africans carrying the Bantu haplotype of sickle cell. Yeah. There's some other evidence as well. You know that black Moors appear on European flags. So if you look at the flag of Corsica, and you can dig up the flag of Corsica straight after this call, the flag of Sardinia, you can pull up the flag of Sardinia straight after this call. There are black Moors on those flags. So the evidence of black Moors is definitely there.
See, that's very interesting because even to a certain extent, you see a certain black component within a lot of Italian people, specifically in like Sicily sometimes, right? Because some of them, have afros.
Yeah. And he came out in one of the films. Yeah. There was a film, a gangster film, one of the Robert De Niro-ish gangster films. And there is a scene where an Italian insults a Sicilian and says, "And you guys are descended from the Moors," right? Yeah, there's a scene, and a lot of us in Britain use it as teaching material about the supposed the Sicilians being mixed with Moors. Yeah. When we wrap this up, I'll find that scene and I'll send it to you.
Okay. I know what scene you're talking about. It's called True Romance.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
that's pretty interesting because my teacher a long time ago was of Sicilian heritage, and
Yeah.
he whenever he grew his hair out, his hair would go like this, and whenever he would say something
Yeah.
crazy to me, I'll be like, we family, right? you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't like that at all. I'm like, come on now, we family, man. We probably both got the sickle cell
Yeah.
trait right now. Like, you know.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. That's right.
And see that part, but even Shakespeare, wrote about the Moors and how they were
Yeah.
mixing, with white women, Aaron the Moor and Titus Andronicus,
Yeah.
Othello, who I played. Um,
Yeah.
he even writes about it, which is even interesting because the Moors and the Jews, the Sephardic, they were already kicked out by that time Shakespeare was writing. And if you want to study the mindset of a culture at a specific point in time, you always want to study the literature. So it's like the bard himself is telling you, oh yeah, these Moors were here for a while and they put the flag down. So that's interesting.
Yeah. 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 And what it is, it's very noticeable that when Shakespeare is writing Moorish characters, he makes them three-dimensional. He writes about them with a certain amount of sympathy. And there's speculation that one of his lady friends was called Lucy Morgan, also called Lucy Negro. And there's speculation that is being developed. I mean, there's a right-wing newspaper in Britain called the Daily Mail, and they believe that Lucy Morgan, also known as Lucy Negro, Shakespeare's sonnets are written for her. You know that there's a sonnet where Shakespeare says, in old times, black was not counted fair. In other words, back in the day, black was not considered beautiful, but it is now. And he goes on to explain this in one of his sonnets. And so what it shows is by the time Shakespeare is writing, we black people had not lost our high status yet. You see? So, you know, by the time we get into the 17th and the 18th century world, we're just slaves. We hadn't met that fate yet. So Shakespeare could write about us with dignity. Our role in Spain could be spoken of with dignity. Scholars didn't lie and say, no, they weren't our thing. So in the time that Shakespeare was writing, we had not lost our position of reverence and respect yet. That was coming. Do you see?
Hmm. Yeah. Remember, remember, like I think maybe a year or two ago today, we had set up a little interview with the very beautiful and gorgeous Dr. Data Riddles Bardiche,
Yeah,
and we
yeah, I
were
remember that.
talking, we were talking about the Moors and having a good time, and she was telling me some real interesting stuff about the Moors
Yeah,
too.
let me say something. Yeah. And she's found some good information. She's found some very good information. One thing, there was something that I sent to you maybe 2 years ago, and it's a film clip of an Englishman called Michael Palin, and he's on a Saharan, trans-Saharan, uh, what's it, and everybody's black. Those people are Tuaregs. The Tuaregs are the basis of the Berbers, the basis of the Moors. Do you see? So if you want to see what an unmixed Moor would have looked like, that piece of film footage, and I even put the timestamp on where you should start the clip if you still got it, of what Tuaregs, Moors, whatever, Berbers, whatever you want to call them, what they would have looked like unmixed.
Mm. And this meeting's about to cut off again in another minute, so I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, I think we
So, it's
no problem.
the Moors. It's like we've got all the evidence, all the primary sources to show that the Moors most likely look like us. 700 years ago, that were the soldiers, and
Yeah, and what it is that this is the real problem. The real problem is this: Islam bans figurative arts. That's the problem. So consequently, the Moors aren't going to make figurative images of themselves, and that would have ended any discussion. Do you see? But the problem is Islam bans figurative art, so we're going to have to rely on documents, and the documents do say what we say they said, but it is complicated because we know for a fact that there were pale Moors as well. They were in the mix. They just weren't the majority.
hmm, yeah, that would make sense.